Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Jen Curtis podcast. I thought this week I would do something a little bit different and a bit more personal and give an update of my first trimester. As I'm recording this, I'm just coming up to week 12 of my third pregnancy. So I thought this would be a good time to just reflect on these 3 months, especially now that I'm just starting to emerge from the kind of haze and brain fog of these past few weeks. I thought this might be a helpful topic for those of you who are pregnant and maybe going through your first pregnancy or a later pregnancy. I'm going to divide this podcast up into symptoms that I've personally been struggling with. And I'm going to talk a little bit more broadly because obviously I work with pregnant clients as well. I've worked with pregnant women for the past 10 years. So I definitely have a wider view of, what is normal and what happens in other women's pregnancies. I definitely have a very acute awareness of in the ways that I'm very, very typical and the ways that I'm different from other people, which I think is something that really helps me in pregnancy, having seen so many other women go through it and knowing, that basically everything's normal and as bad as it can feel at times and as hard as it can be to prioritize your health and fitness. I see just how much everyone struggles with it. And that comparison point, I think, calms me down quite a lot. Whereas clients that I work with often get very stressed out about what they're not able to do and what they're struggling with, not really realizing that everyone struggles with it. So after talking about the symptoms that I've been dealing with the past few months, I thought I'd cover diet, exercise, mindset, and also probably along the way sort of compare a little bit to my last 2 pregnancies, because there are a lot of similarities but some differences as well. And I thought that might also be helpful for those of you going into your third or second pregnancies, just to kind of just to think about some of the ways that it can be different going into it a second or a third time. So the main symptoms that I struggle with is extreme fatigue. I've slept at least 10 hours a night. Sometimes I sleep 12 hours a night. It's absolutely ridiculous. I'm in bed while my husband's putting the kids to sleep. I'm going to bed myself and really struggle to wake up in the morning. And just been extremely tired all day, every day. So fatigue has been a massive symptom for me. Food aversions and nausea. I've just been nauseous constantly for the past couple of months, but it usually kind of gets a bit worse in the afternoon. And it does kind of come and go. I do get moments of relief from the nausea, and then other times it gets really, really bad. But more than the nausea has just been the food aversions. Everything makes me feel sick. Everything is disgusting, and I'm just completely put off by every type of food. Especially anything even remotely healthy, like protein and vegetables in particular, just disgust me. It's been so hard to get anything down, and anything sort of even remotely healthy down. Having said that, I also don't really have any cravings, and it's not like I'm really enjoying junk food or anything like that. It's just plain. It's white bread with butter, that, crackers, things like that. That's fruit. That's all I can handle. It's even things like ice cream and chocolate have just made me feel like they just completely put me off as well. It's not like I enjoy eating those foods either. So just everything has just been just absolutely disgusting. But the other major symptom that I struggle with, and I realize now that I really struggled with it in my previous pregnancies as well, is just an insatiable hunger. I'm just so hungry all the time. And that combination of like extreme food aversions, nausea, and insatiable hunger is just so unfair, just so monumentally unfair. It's just so miserable because you're stuck in like between a rock and a hard place. Sometimes I'm when you are hungry, you get, or at least this is what I've experienced. When I'm hungry, the nausea gets worse, but at the same time, those food aversions go up, and so you have to eat to get rid of the food aversion, to get rid of the nausea, but then you don't want to eat because everything's so disgusting. And I've been stuck in that between a rock and that hard place so many times, and it's been so unpleasant. And I know for a fact something that really annoys me, because looking into, obviously I Google things just like everyone else, and trying to look into why my hunger level goes up so much, you get so many fluffy, like, things that you find on the internet that don't really have really sort of vacuous comments like, you're making a baby, of course your hunger's going to go up. But the thing is that first trimester, your metabolic needs don't actually go up at all. Like, you don't, all of the work that's going into building a baby and creating all that infrastructure, it doesn't actually translate to more calories burnt a day. So second trimester, you burn about 300 calories a day more than you did when you weren't pregnant. And in the final trimester, it goes up to about 450 calories a day. Whereas in the first trimester, your calorie needs don't actually go up at all. And in fact, if you're anything like me and spent most of your first trimester lying on your back, your calorie needs actually go down dramatically because you're burning far fewer calories through activity. So I'm somebody who is absolutely hyperactive. Like, I never stop. I'm always on the move. I'm super fidgety. I find it really hard to sit still for more than 5 minutes. I drive my husband crazy if we try and watch a movie or something. I'm up and down and up and down and up and down. But pregnancy, I've just been like glued to my seat. I just can't muster up the energy to move. So I know for a fact that my energy expenditure has gone down enormously. I'm working out much less hard in my workouts. I'm working out less often. And I am just moving less on a day-to-day basis. So the increased hunger can't be explained by increased energy expenditure. And I find that really annoying that a lot of places don't really kind of acknowledge that. They just kind of say very vacuous things like, oh, you're making a baby, of course you're going to be hungrier. Like, loads of energy goes into making a baby. And there's only sort of half truths that go into that. But looking into things, it seems as though the hormonal changes in the first trimester, like increased progesterone and things like that, can massively rack up your hunger well beyond your energy needs. And I also know that my hunger levels have been way beyond my energy needs because I've also put on an awful lot of weight. I've put on about 4 kilos, and most of that has been in really the last 4 weeks. And I'm one of these people who I've tracked my calories many, many times. I know exactly how much is in everything. One of the reasons why I get my clients to track calories is because then you can't unknow what you learn through calorie tracking. You don't need to track for the rest of your life. It helps you make better decisions. But I've been acutely aware of just how much I've been eating this first trimester. So it's not much of a surprise that I've put on about 4 kilos of body fat. It's likely not all of it is body fat at this point. It's likely that it's like probably a couple of kilos of it is more like water weight. You know, your body's busy making a couple of extra litres of blood in the first trimester. So it's not all fat gain, but it's definitely been much more than the recommended weight gain for someone my size for the first trimester, which is definitely unsettling. So those are the main symptoms that I've been struggling with: fatigue and the accompanying brain fog, food aversions, nausea, and just a massive, massive, massive insatiable hunger. And I guess this is an important point to say, that what I have learned over 10 years from working with lots of different pregnant women online, postpartum, in person, training them in a gym, helping them with nutrition, helping them with training, is just how much these symptoms differ from person to person. It's really quite crazy, actually, that we're all undergoing the same basic physiological processes, and yet it manifests itself so totally different in different women. Some women, that I've worked with don't have any food aversions at all, or seem to have very light food aversions, or just a little bit of nausea. Pretty much everyone seems to struggle with fatigue. But I've worked with tons of clients that have, not really experienced any increased hunger or any real changes to their appetite, and who just don't gain any weight in the first trimester or actually lose body fat. I had one client who started out quite overweight, and something about pregnancy made her sort of lose quite a lot of body fat. And it was really the only time that she felt like she could really get her eating under control and control her weight. And it's just so interesting. This is just more of a curiosity here. Just so interesting just how differently it affects different women. And I'm always taken aback by just how differently so many of my clients react to these things, how some people get gestational diabetes and others don't, how some people gain, I have one client that's just getting to the end of her pregnancy now, and she's only gained about 7 kilos throughout her entire pregnancy, and I'm on track to gain that in like 2 months. So it's just very, very interesting how different it is from person to person. And also going and Googling a few things and having a little look at what other women have experienced. I've gone and listened to a few sort of podcasts. I haven't really found anything particularly useful, but a lot of the information out there for pregnancy is absolutely useless. But it has been interesting to see that some women have sort of gained, like in the first trimester, like 10 kilos, like 20 pounds. And I guess it kind of puts everything in perspective, because I'm definitely used to seeing a lot more people who don't actually gain much weight or only gain a little bit. And I tend to gain weight very, very quickly through pregnancy. So it can be interesting to compare to other people. Comparisons sometimes can be really unhelpful, but I think they can be helpful sometimes to just see how middle of the pack you really are in terms of the extremes of what can happen from person to person. I often find it quite humbling to realize, I'm actually not that special. I'm pretty sort of middle of the pack and uninteresting, even though it feels like a really big deal to you. So moving on to diet. So I went into this pregnancy surprisingly naive, considering that I've been through this twice before. I went into this pregnancy with such good intentions. I was probably the fittest and I wasn't actually the leanest that I'd ever been. About a year ago, I got my leanest ever, and I maintained close to that body fat percentage over the past year. And I've really, a big change that I've made over the past couple of years since my second was born is changes to my nutrition. I used to be more one of those, if it fits your macros kind of person who worked out really hard, but I also ate a lot of shit and drank far too much alcohol. And a big change I've made over the past couple of years is just improving my diet, just getting the basics, like eating proper food instead of cookies and things like that. And I went into this pregnancy with really good intentions to maintain those nutritional standards. And also things like, something that I introduced a couple of years ago was to eat regular meals, have certain anchor points and to eat at the same time and the same sorts of meals every single day. And that's been a massive change for me and something that I work with a lot of my clients on. And it's something that's really helped me maintain really good energy levels and just stay on top of what I should be eating much, much better rather than kind of snacking or whatever else. And I went into this pregnancy with such good intentions to keep those changes, to focus my meals around protein, I stocked up on things like salmon and liver and red meat so that I could make sure that I got the right amounts of things from week to week. And then around week 6, I got hit with the food aversions, and anything like fish or meat or chicken was just off the menu. Like, I just could not choke it down. I couldn't even stand the smell of it cooking. And yeah, I've hardly eaten any vegetables since about week 6. I've done my absolute best to sort of still maintain my proper meal times. They've just been much more carby meals. So things like porridge, like a big bowl of porridge with banana and yogurt. So trying to get my protein in more through dairy, because dairy doesn't make me feel sick. Things like shakes as well, where I can. I've still been able to manage scrambled eggs on toast a lot of the time, but not all the time. Sometimes I've had to be a bit more creative and have like French toast with like loads and loads of maple syrup on it, because eggs have sort of made me feel a bit sick as well. So I've done my best to sort of maintain standards wherever I can, but I have also had an awful lot of meals that have just been bread and butter and crackers, and a lot of afternoons in particular where the sickness has just got so bad that I've had to kind of munch on things like crackers and plain cake and stuff like that to just get rid of the annoying thing is that eating that way does actually lessen the nausea symptoms. But then I kind of get in the kind of catch-22 where then I'm not hungry enough for dinner, but I need to still eat some dinner, and then it's really hard to eat anything healthy because you're not actually hungry, and it's just a really horrible cycle that I'm just not used to. Something that I say very often is that, I say this to my online clients, I say this online, is that pregnancy truly is, I believe this deep down at the bottom of my heart, that pregnancy is where good intentions go to die. I follow a couple of people online who have managed to maintain super nutritious diets and not overeat and not eat any crap throughout their whole pregnancies. And they are amazing and wonderful, and I admire them, but they are also unicorns. And I really don't think that this is really a reality for many of us. And I honestly just don't think they struggle with the sorts of symptoms that some of us struggle with. I just don't think their nausea or food aversions are as bad as they are for other people. It's really important to keep that into account, take that into account, is that the severity of these symptoms are going to change so much from person to person. So it's really difficult to compare yourself to other people, because on the surface, it might look like somebody's eating much better than you and working out much more than you, but they might be struggling a lot less with symptoms than you are. So I think that's just something really, really important to take into account. Finally, with diet, like I said, I haven't really been drawn towards, junk food either. That's also made me sick. But I have had a couple of occasions where I've just not been able to choke anything down. There was this one time we went to the aquarium and I ended up in just like a ball on the floor, just quivering with sickness. It was awful. And I went and bought myself just like a plain packet of crisps. I was like, I think this is all I can eat. And I just could not. It was like my mouth wouldn't produce saliva. So it was just really dry and powdery in my mouth. It's just like plain Walker's crisps. So I went back and I bought a packet of Doritos, and I never eat crisps. I never eat crisps. And I got like the really spicy, tangy ones that are full of MSG and full of all sorts of artificial flavorings. And I could actually eat it. And I'd also previously tried to eat a sandwich and just could not choke it down. And so I had 2 packets of that for my like afternoon snack. There was something about the sort of like hyper palatability of it that just made it possible to eat, and it did actually help calm down my symptoms. But it just goes to show I'm just using it as an example for just how much everything can go to shit at certain points along the way. Anyway, I think I've said enough about diet. So moving on to exercise. Again, pregnancy truly is where good intentions go to die. And I think something that a lot of women don't realize is that when you get pregnant, like right from conception, there is a cascade of hormonal changes that basically cause a phenomenon called underfill. And that's where all of your blood vessels dilate. And so there's much more space in your cardiovascular system. And so your blood pressure drops. And then your heart rate goes up. So in addition to the fatigue that you're feeling, and some theories suggest that the fatigue is at least in part caused by this process of underfill. But in addition to the severe fatigue that you might be feeling, you also have this process of like your blood pressure dropping, your heart rate going up. And you don't feel that, right? Your resting heart rate is going to be 10 beats per minute higher than it was like 5 minutes ago before conception. But you don't really feel it at rest. You only feel it when you when you start working out, and your heart rate just goes through the roof at much, much lower intensity levels. And it really contributes to this feeling of fatigue, and just the same exercise that you were doing before just feels much, much, much harder. And I went into this pregnancy, I just started doing CrossFit. I just was at a point in my life where I've been doing sort of bodybuilding style stuff for a long time, and I really needed a change, and I really needed something to spice it up. So I started just before I got pregnant. And I kept going for about 4-6 weeks, something like that. And it was all going well, and I was having to modify things heavily, and I was really struggling, but it was all good. And then I had a break, and I didn't manage to go back to it. Had a break around week 8, and I didn't manage to get back to it. So I was just back to doing my regular strength sessions a couple times a week in my home gym, which I'm very, very lucky to have. And last week, I just started swimming again, and I'm really kicking myself because I've put off going. I promised myself that when I got pregnant for the 3rd time I would swim, because in my first pregnancy with Charlie I swam twice a week right up to week 42, and I really think it made a massive difference, not just to my health and my fitness, but to my mental health more than anything else. Something about water is just feels so good. And for some reason, I put it off this pregnancy, and I only just started this week, and I've been so pleased with, like, it just feels like night and day. First of all, it's extremely hot here in Israel at the moment. It's August. It's absolutely just awful. It's like 37 degrees every day. And so swimming, getting in cold water just feels wonderful. But there's something about swimming that makes me feel like something that many of you who, if you exercise regularly, you'll relate to, is just like, I pride myself a lot on being physically capable, on being physically strong, on being able to do things, and being able, being fit and healthy. Like, that's something, it's a really good feeling for me. And over the past 2 months, my workouts have been such a slog. Like, the weights feel so much heavier. I feel so out of breath. I feel so heavy. It's like I've still been working out, but it's been really hard to push myself. And then getting into the water, all of a sudden, like my first session, I just did 40 lengths, which is a kilometer. Straight off the bat, in half an hour, I felt absolutely fantastic. I swam for the 2nd time today, and I did 60 lengths, so it's a 1.5 kilometers, and I haven't been swimming regularly. And it's such a nice feeling to just feel physically capable, and to just feel like my fitness levels are still there when everything else is sort of falling apart, right? Like, I can't run anymore. I feel tired just walking. My regular strength sessions just feel so hard. And everything feels so heavy. So it's just so nice. Like, that feeling, besides the physiological and psychological like benefits of, just getting your heart rate up and doing exercise, there's that added element to it of sort of feeling capable again, instead of feeling like an absolute, like, I don't know, marshmallow. In terms of the strength training, I've probably been doing about 2 sessions a week and just trying to maintain my strength levels as much as I can in the major exercises. So until now, I've still been doing pull-ups. I'm down from about 8 pull-ups to about 4 pull-ups. I haven't done pull-ups for over a week though, so I imagine they're going to be disappearing pretty soon. I'm squatting about 35 kilos for 5 reps right now. I started out more around 40, 42.5. I wasn't at my strongest. So I've lost a bit of strength there, but that's to be expected. Deadlifting around 45 kilos instead of 65. And then for the smaller exercises like rows and shoulder press and stuff like that, I'm still maintaining the same strength levels, which is my main priority. You kind of want to think of like strength levels in pregnancy as a kind of diminuendo, because you are going to lose strength levels, especially in the final trimester, but you certainly will slowly over the first 2 trimesters. And I've also found that I'm just much more fatigued. So I've been doing much shorter workouts, and in general, I've been doing either upper body or lower body. Just because then I can do a sort of 30-minute workout, 25 minutes, and I can do, like, I think it's better for me if I do an hour workout, I feel extremely tired, whereas if I do like a half-hour workout, I feel energized. So it's better for me to work out more often and split my workouts up than it is for me to work out less often and do longer workouts. So that way I've managed to be able to sometimes do three workouts a week, and half an hour over different days. So it's given me that sort of energy boost without completely pooping me out. In terms of mindset, I think this is like the biggest change for me this pregnancy. My first pregnancy with Charlie, my mental health suffered so badly. And I think it was just like the unexpectedness of just losing all my physical and mental capacities all at once, and just feeling so terrible, and kind of not knowing. So Charlie's my eldest, he's almost 5 now. So my first pregnancy, just this kind of not knowing that I won't always feel like this. I guess in my first pregnancy, there was this sense of like, oh, fuck, am I going to feel like this for the rest of my life? Is this the new me? Is this how I'm going to feel as a mum? Because this is terrible. This is awful. Like, I just didn't feel like myself. I didn't feel like, I felt like I just had a total personality change. And also I was really still pushing myself to just show up and just suck it up and do it no matter what, especially when it came to work. And at that time I was still training people in a gym, so I still had to show up and do the work, and it was physically very exhausting, being on my feet, being around people all day. And I think that with it, I just didn't have this appreciation of like, you're feeling really tired, and that's so normal. Just like, take it easy. Just don't push yourself as hard. I just didn't have that. I was just like, no, just suck it up. You got to keep going. You can't be weak. You got to keep doing things. And I remember just being incredibly grumpy and snappy with people, and falling out with a lot of people in my first pregnancy. And I think it's just because I felt so crap and was pushing myself so hard. With my second pregnancy with Sam, I had a much better kind of lifestyle. It was just like, we were about 6 months into, maybe a year into the whole COVID situation. I had an online program at that time, and during my pregnancy with Sam, I was filming all of the videos for my second online program, Strong Pregnancy. And so I had a much better lifestyle. People were coming to, I was doing a few training sessions a week, but people coming to me, and the rest of my work was all sort of like this online, or these online courses that I had created and was creating. But I still had a lot of work to do. I had to film a certain amount of videos, and I actually had to do the exercises myself. And it was extremely exhausting, although I did take things a little bit easier and I didn't have to commute. So things were a lot better. This time around, things are totally different. So this isn't so much the mindset side of things. This is more like just my life situation is much better. Since having Sam, both me and my husband have kind of really made massive changes to our work lives. I launched my online coaching program, which has allowed me to earn much more money and to also be able to take a step back when I need to. So when I'm at full capacity, I'm at about 35 clients. And at the moment, I've dropped down to about 25 clients and I'm doing a lot less of the other stuff like social media. So I've been able to drop down to about 25 hours a week, which has allowed me a lot of time for just resting and relaxing, but also there's less of a financial strain than there was before. Because I'm just able to earn more, which has made a massive difference. And also after my second was born, my husband closed his business. COVID completely ruined that. And he started working as an employee, as an engineer in a big high-tech firm, and just has much nicer conditions. Back then he was working, through my second pregnancy, he was working like 12-hour days. He was coming home really late. So I was, fully responsible for picking up our son, and I just had so much more of the childcare on me, whereas he's able to help so much more with that. Now he's able to take them in the mornings and he's able to pick them up a couple of times a week. So that's allowed me. So it's funny because even though I have more, more responsibilities, I have 2 children and not 1, or 0. I've also been able to take my foot off the pedal a lot more and just rest and recover much, much more. And I really do think this is absolutely crucial. I work with lots of women who are pregnant postpartum, and just watching them sort of like go through their 3rd pregnancies and try and keep all the balls up in the air, studying, working, still doing really long days and looking after kids almost on their own sometimes. I don't know how they do it. I really, really don't. And for me, I think even being able to, have, just even be able to, do that, to be able to do it again, to be able to have a 3rd pregnancy, to be able to think about a 3rd child. A big part of that has been due to sort of over the past few years, really since having Charlie, my husband and I really engineering our lifestyles to suit the kind of parents we want to be and the kind of lives we want to have. And I just don't think without that kind of engineering of our lifestyle so that I get all the rest that I need, I just don't think that I personally would be able to cope with another pregnancy. I don't think I would have been able to cope with the second one. But in terms of mindset this time, I have felt much more okay with just not being okay. Like I said, with my first in particular, I felt like pregnancy and all the changes and all the loss of my faculties, I really got very depressed and I really struggled with mental health all the way through. I know a lot of women struggle with postpartum depression, but I really struggled with depression much more during pregnancy. And postpartum, it all just kind of lifted. But it was that feeling of like thinking this was going to be like the new me, that like my life was over, that like I wasn't going to function the way that I did before. Whereas this time I'm much more like, okay, I know that this is just 9 months and then life will resume. I will feel different. I know that once I give birth, like I just feel different, like even the next day, right? Or even a few hours later, just like this cloud lifts. But also knowing that this really hard bit of the first trimester is really only like a couple of months, and then it will get easier. So I think I've just been much more okay with it not being okay, and just okay with saying I'm completely exhausted, I need to go to bed, and then just going and lying in bed, going and having a nap, going and watching hours of Netflix if that's all I can do. And just being like, this is okay, this is not who I am, and this is not going to stay the same. Like I'm gonna feel normal again. And I really do. I know after both of my pregnancies, just like as soon as I'd given birth, even though I had C-sections both times, it just was like a real like cloud just lifted off of me. This real weight was lifted off of me just hours after the operation. Even though I was in pain, even though I was all drugged up, I just felt like myself again. All the food aversions went away, and I just started feeling much better. And I know that's going to happen. I really enjoyed postpartum with both of my kids. I really enjoyed the rehab. I really enjoyed getting fit again, and I really enjoyed the weight loss journey, especially after Sam, where I worked with a coach, and I learned so much about fat loss from just doing it myself and working with a coach and finding all of my blind spots and all of the mistakes that I was making. So I actually feel even more equipped this time to do that. And I do genuinely look forward to that postpartum journey again, to building my strength back up again, recovering from C-section again, losing weight and getting really, really lean again. I really love that part. And it's really great working towards really, really tangible goals. And I really enjoy having a baby. I really enjoy that bit. It's just a shame that pregnancy sucks so much. So this time has felt a lot easier because of that as well. And I think also with your first pregnancy, there is just so much that is terrifying. You don't know what birth is going to be like. There's so much unknowns. You don't know what having a baby is going to be like. You hear all these horror stories. You feel so different, and your identity shifts so much that it can be really, really, really scary. And I had all of that with my first. And then my second was kind of, there was a lot less unknown, but I spent a lot of my time, whereas with my first, I worried a lot about me. Like, I worried about my birth, my body, my identity, my life, how things would change. With my second, I was really just so focused on my first. Like, am I fucking his life up? How is he going to cope with a sibling? Is it going to be hard for him? How's he going to transition? You know, am I ruining his life? Which is absolutely ridiculous. For anyone who has more than one kid, like, you see how much they bring to each other's lives and how much love and that sibling love is just amazing. But when you're pregnant with your second, you genuinely worry about these things. I also had like the question of whether or not I was going to go for a VBAC. I chose a planned C-section the second time in the end, but there was a long time when I was sort of researching and considering the options, which also felt like an unknown and felt a bit uncertain. Whereas this time I know I've had 2 C-sections, I'm having a C-section, there's no way I'm having a VBAC. So that's just another uncertainty that's off the table. And I know that, you know, both of my children are going to cope with having a sibling, that it's going to be a really positive thing in their life. And so I'm not worried about them. I'm not worried. My identity has already changed. I've gone from maiden to mother. I'm not worried about that transition. So it's just kind of like the third one, you're just kind of able to just say, okay, it is what it is. It sucks for a few months, but then it's going to be great. And so it's much easier to stay positive and just kind of, I wouldn't say enjoy it, because there's not much to enjoy in pregnancy, but just kind of get through it and know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I think another big mindset kind of thing for me this pregnancy has been just like reminding myself that it's okay to start again. That like, so if I have like a really terrible day in terms of diet and just eat way too much and eat loads of crap, I know that it's like, I don't have to just get fuckititis and that's it for the rest of the pregnancy. I can still watch what I eat and try and eat healthy foods and eat as well as I can the next day. And when I have a good day, to just kind of like, okay, good, that's another good day under your belt. And then when a shit day comes along, okay, you have a shit day, but you've got to get back on track. I think there can be a bit of a tendency. So like I'm 12 weeks now, and sometimes when we're pregnant, we can have a bit of a tendency to be like, oh, I haven't trained as much as I should in the first trimester, and I haven't eaten as well as I should, and I've gained too much weight. Now it's just a write-off for the rest of the pregnancy. But really, I've only been pregnant for like 2.5 months, and I've got another 6 months ahead of me. So there is so much that you can do between now and the end of your pregnancy. And I think a lot of women do get into that mindset where the first trimester is a bit of a train wreck. And so they're like, oh, there's no point starting to exercise now in my second trimester. But there is a point, the difference between working out twice a week for the next 6 months and not, the difference between eating better now that the aversions have gotten a bit better and not doing that is massive, and is going to make such a massive difference by the end of the pregnancy. And so I am really being conscious of, when I feel better, to have a better day in terms of food and my meals, and to make sure I get some exercise in whenever I can, because that also makes me feel much better and relieves a lot of my nausea. And to just, if I get a good day under my belt, a good week under my belt, it's just about getting more as much as you can on the side of doing all the things that you need to, even if there are days where, you fall off the edge of a cliff and things go completely tits up. You just kind of got to have that ability to get back on track and get back on with those good intentions. And that is something that I work with a lot with my online clients, is being like, okay, cool, you overate, whatever. Just forget about it and focus on the next day in front of you. You can't change the past, but you can control the future. You can control how you eat from now on. And I think that's never more true than during pregnancy. Don't get fuckitis. Don't be like, there's no point because I've had a really bad week. I've had really bad weeks and then really good weeks. And in those good weeks, I've managed to work out 4 times and eat much better and not gain weight. And then I've had another bad week again. And that's much better than just having all bad weeks. So I guess that's all I've got left to say is kind of my plan postpartum, but this podcast is getting long enough. So I think I'll make that into a separate episode if any of you are interested. If you are interested in hearing about what my postpartum plan is in terms of rehab, in terms of regaining strength and fitness, and in terms of weight loss, because I will be trying to lose fat postpartum again, and probably starting much earlier this time. If you are interested in hearing about that, then let me know. I'll obviously be talking about it when the time comes, but if you want to know what the plan is, then I can make an episode on that. Let me know if you found this episode useful, interesting. Let me know if you have any questions. And thanks for listening.